I still remember the day my partner and I moved into our new home on Cedar Lane, nestled in the heart of Maplewood. The sun was bright, casting a warm glow over the freshly painted white walls of our two-story house. We were excited about our fresh start, blissfully unaware of the darkness that lay hidden beneath the surface. The gentle breeze carried the scent of blooming lilacs from our backyard, a sharp contrast to the weight forming in my chest as we unpacked boxes. The first couple of weeks were filled with laughter and joy as we settled in. We hosted friends for dinner and enjoyed long walks in the nearby park, laughing about the quirks of our new home. But soon, little things started to feel off. I noticed the flickering lights in the basement at odd hours, and strange drafts would sweep through the house, chilling me despite the warm weather outside. My partner brushed it off as typical old house quirks, but I felt a nagging sense of unease creeping in. It was late one Thursday night around 11 p.m. when I first heard it, a faint whispering echoing through the hall. I was curled up on the couch, half watching a show when the sound floated through the air, soft yet distinct. It wasn't just the wind, it was a voice, something distinctly human, but I couldn't make out the words. My heart raced as I strained to listen, desperation clawing at my thoughts. I got up, creeping towards the hallway, feeling the chill of the air wrap around me like icy fingers. As I reached the hallway, the whispers faded, leaving behind only the sound of my frantically beating heart. I called out, half expecting my partner to step out, but the silence was deafening. Reluctantly, I returned to the living room, convincing myself that my imagination had taken control. Yet sleep eluded me that night, and I lay awake, eyes glued to the shadows that danced along the walls. The following week, the whispers returned, but this time they were paired with another unsettling phenomenon: footsteps. I would hear them thumping above me, the sound of heavy boots pacing back and forth in the attic. I tried to ignore it, thinking it was just the house settling, but the unnerving rhythm of the steps soon turned into a haunting cadence that kept me up night after night. My partner always fell asleep soundly beside me, oblivious to my mounting fears. One evening, I finally decided to confront whatever was up there. My partner was out for the night, leaving me home alone. Armed with nothing but a flashlight, I climbed up the stairs to the attic, heart pounding with each creaky step. The smell of dust hung heavily in the air, and I felt as though I was climbing into a tomb. I switched on my flashlight, illuminating the many boxes stacked haphazardly against the walls, casting eerie shadows that danced along the rafters. As I scanned the room, a sudden chill swept through the attic, and the temperature dropped sharply. My breath came out in fogged puffs as I stepped deeper, the light flickering in response to the unnatural cold. I felt the presence before I saw anything, something dark lurking in the corners of my vision. I turned quickly, but found nothing, just my shaking hands and racing heart in the oppressive silence of the attic. Just as I was about to retreat, a box tipped over by itself, spilling its contents on the floor. Old family photographs scattered around me, faces smiling into my flashlight beam. I knelt to gather them, feeling a mixture of intrigue and dread. One photograph caught my eye, a portrait of a family that once lived in the house. The father stood tall, but the mother and the children had expressions that seemed eerily vacant. Their eyes, they seemed to follow me as I moved. I felt a sudden chill run down my spine, and without thinking I bolted from the attic, unable to shake the feeling that I was being watched. That night I locked every door and closed every window tighter than ever before, whispering to myself that it was just an old house. But as I lay in bed, a heavy weight settled over me, wrapping around my chest, and I drifted into a restless sleep filled with nightmares of whispers and shadows. Days turned into weeks, and the whispers transformed into more direct messages, names etched into the walls of the attic, faint but clear. I began to feel that the home was trying to communicate with me, reaching through time from a forgotten past. Each night I would scribble the names down, trying to piece together the untold story hidden within the house. My partner remained blissfully unaware, dismissing my growing obsession as just another quirky feature of our old home. Then, one fateful night, I decided to confront the spirits directly. Armed with a recorder, I climbed into the attic again, determined to make contact. I announced myself, my voice shaking in the oppressive atmosphere, asking if anyone was there for a moment. There was only silence, thick and suffocating. Then, a whisper echoed back so low I could barely hear it. My name. It sent a shock of terror racing through my veins, and just as I was about to run, I felt a cold breath on my neck. Panicking, I sprinted towards the attic door, but it slammed shut before I could reach it, locking me in with whatever haunted the darkness. I pounded on the door, shouting for help, but my voice felt lost in the suffocating silence. The whispers grew louder, now sounding almost like laughter, a mocking melody spiraling around me. I felt the darkness wrapping around me like a shroud, and in that moment I realized this wasn't just a haunting, it was a warning. When the door finally swung open a few moments later, my partner stood there, wide-eyed and confused. I stumbled out, gasping for breath, and swore I could still feel the icy fingers of fear gripping my heart. I told him everything, but he stared at me like I had lost my mind. As he helped me down the stairs, I noticed the flickering lights had gone dark completely, and for the first time the house felt eerily quiet, too quiet. The whispers had vanished, but something deep inside me knew they were far from gone. From that night on, I began to investigate the history of the house. I found out it had once belonged to a family that mysteriously vanished without a trace, leaving everything behind, including all their possessions. I felt a cold shiver down my spine as I realized the photos I found in the attic were of their faces. I became obsessed with discovering what really happened to them, convinced it was the key to understanding the restless spirits that lingered in our home. But as I delved deeper into the story, strange things continued to happen. In my dreams, I began seeing visions of shadowy figures begging me for help as they called my name. I often woke up in a cold sweat, feeling the weight of their despair on my heart. I tried to ignore it, focusing instead on finding the truth about my home. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that by uncovering their story, I was somehow awakening something far more sinister. A few months passed, and one night as I sat in the attic, I felt a presence behind me. I turned slowly, half expecting to see nothing, but I was met with the silhouette of a woman, her eyes hollow and pleading. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Panic seized me, and I stumbled backward, unable to break gaze with the tortured visage before me. At that moment, I understood the house was not just haunted. It was a prison for their souls, and I was a part of it now. I fled from the attic, locking the door behind me, but the weight of their sorrow was etched into my mind. I couldn't escape the feeling that I needed to help them find peace, and yet I was terrified of what would happen if I did. Would I become trapped like they were? In that moment, Cedar Lane transformed from a place of comfort to a haunted echo of despair, and I knew, in the shadows that lingered within those walls, the answer to their tragedy awaited forever. Moving into our new apartment in downtown Seattle in September 2022 felt like a dream come true. The city buzzed with energy, and everything seemed brand new as I unpacked my boxes on that warm autumn day. My small studio had a vintage charm with exposed brick walls and large windows that overlooked the bustling street below. It was perfect, or at least, I thought so at first. The first few weeks went by smoothly. I spent my evenings getting to know the neighborhood, finding cozy coffee shops, and exploring the local parks. But as the days turned into weeks, I started noticing small inconveniences, the light bulbs flickering, the radiator hissing unexpectedly. I attributed it all to the old building's quirks and didn't think much of it until the night the doorknob began to turn on its own. It was a chilly October night when I returned home late from work. The air had turned crisp, and the city was draped in shadows. I fumbled for my keys, the cold metal biting into my fingertips as I unlocked the door. As I stepped inside, I heard it, the soft, rhythmic clicking of the doorknob behind me. I froze, heart racing, turning to see the knob twist, just slightly as if someone was attempting to come in. I quickly glanced around my empty apartment, feeling a rush of fear surge through me. My first instinct was to convince myself it was just the wind, but deep down, I knew this building wasn't that old. I shook my head, trying to dismiss the unsettling feeling, and walked further into the apartment, yet the sensation of being watched lingered like the heavy fog outside, wrapping around me like a shroud. That night, I struggled to sleep. Every creak of the floorboards and rustle of the wind sent me into a frenzy. Just as I began to doze off, the doorknob rattled again, louder this time, as if someone outside was trying to force their way in. I shot up in bed, heart pounding in my ears, my mind racing through every horror story I'd ever read, imagining a stranger lurking just outside my door. Summoning all my courage, I grabbed my phone and took a deep breath. I pointed the flashlight beam towards the door, illuminating the brass doorknob that had turned into a sinister entity. It looked ordinary, but in that moment, it felt like a portal to another world. I stepped closer, cautiously, feeling the air grow heavier with each passing second. The rattling persisted, my nerves fraying with every echoing knock, as I summoned the strength to open the door and confront whatever awaited me outside. With a trembling hand, I turned the knob and yanked the door open, ready to face whatever lurked beyond. The hallway lay empty, bathed in shadows, the lights flickered gently overhead, and for a moment I thought I imagined the entire episode. But just as I started to close the door, I noticed something on the ground, a small crumpled note, dampened as if it had just been dropped. I bent down to pick it up, the damp paper feeling cold against my fingertips. Unfolding it slowly, chills raced through me as I read the messages scrawled in a hurried hand. I'm still here. I can't leave. Help me. The words echoed in my mind, sending waves of terror crashing over me. Who had left this note? And more importantly, what was trying to force its way in? I rushed back into my apartment, locking the door behind me, my heart racing. The following day, I decided to dig into the history of my apartment. A quick search revealed that the building had once housed a family that had vanished without a trace years prior. My stomach twisted as I thought about the implications. Was the spirit of someone who once lived there desperately trying to communicate with me? What kind of fate had befallen them, and was I now becoming a part of their story? That night, I resolved to investigate further. I set up my phone to record while I slept, hoping to capture any strange sounds or whispers. As the hours passed, I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me, the atmosphere growing thick around me. Sleep proved elusive, and around 3 a.m. I heard it again, the unmistakable jingling of my doorknob. Heart racing, I lay still listening intently, every fiber of my being tensed with anticipation. Then, there it was. The doorknob turned, and the door creaked open slightly. I could feel a cool breeze circulating through the crack, as if something was beyond the threshold, waiting for me to invite it in. The faint sound of whispers seemed to drift into the room, a soft chorus of disembodied voices urging me to come closer. I felt paralyzed, as if bound by an invisible force, rooted to my spot in bed. This thing wanted me to engage with it. With a surge of adrenaline, I managed to sit up, focusing on the door frame, my breath shallow and quick. I snatched my phone from the bedside, the camera still recording, and aimed it toward the door. The camera light illuminated the hallway beyond, the darkness clawing at the edges like a living thing. In that moment, I needed answers, and I was ready to confront whatever awaited me out there. I stood up, heart pounding as I approached the door. The whispers intensified, almost pleading now, wrapping around me like a fog. I paused, taking a deep breath before pushing the door open wider. The hallway awaited me, eerily empty but filled with an unsettling presence. I captured the moment on video, my hand quivering as I stepped into the dim light of the corridor, wondering who or what was reaching out for help. As I stepped out, the shadows danced along the walls, casting strange shapes that seemed to shift and squirm. I glanced behind me. The door creaked shut on its own, making my heart drop. My senses were heightened with fear as I turned back to face the hallway, lit only by the flickering bulb at the far end. I could feel a presence drawing closer, the whispers transitioning from urgency to desperation as I ventured further. Panic surged through me as I stepped past the first door on my left. I turned. There was something in the room, a dark shadow looming in the corner. I could see it shifting, almost like a figure, its outline undefined. I wanted to scream, but all that escaped my lips was a choked gasp. The air felt thick as the whispers grew louder, now sounding like a chorus of voices crying for release. My heart raced as I inched closer, unable to pull myself away from the scene playing out before me. I aimed my phone's camera towards the figure, my fingers trembling as I felt something pull me closer. The shadow seemed to swirl around me, and for a moment I felt a strange sense of calm amidst the chaos. I could hear the whispers clearer now, calling out to me, begging for help. Adrenaline coursed through my veins as I took a deep breath, ready to confront whatever had taken residence in my home. Just as I approached, the figure lunged forward, and I stumbled back, fear gripping my heart like a vice. The room exploded in chaos as the lights flickered violently, illuminating the horrified expression of what once was a person. They seemed to meld into the shadows themselves, a tragic sight that filled me with despair. The last thing I remembered was my own scream echoing in the air as I fell back into the hallway, the door slamming shut behind me. I lay there on the floor, breathless and shaking, as the memories of the night flooded my mind. I couldn't shake the image of that face, the longing, the desperation, and I knew I had to do something, but would confronting the haunting lead to my own peril, or could I help free the trapped spirit that lingered in my apartment? With newfound resolve, I determined to seek out the history of the family who had vanished, promising to uncover the truth that had tied them to this place forever. In June 2021, I found myself moving into an old Victorian house nestled in the outskirts of New Orleans. The character of the place had me immediately captivated, the cracked walls, the ornate woodwork, the overgrown garden that whispered secrets of a time long past. I felt a sense of history enveloping me as I stepped through the door, accompanied by the sweet scent of honeysuckle that clung to the air. For the first couple of weeks, everything seemed perfect. The creaks of the floorboards felt comforting, and the gentle sighs of the house welcomed me as I settled in. However, as July rolled around, the house began to reveal its darker side. Strange noises erupted from the basement late at night, muffled whispers that crawled up the walls, making their way into my dreams and waking me in a cold sweat. It was around 2 a.m. one particularly hot summer night when I was jolted awake by the sound of someone crying. The noise was haunting, echoing through the hall, as if a sorrowful soul was trapped within the walls. I sat upright in bed, heart racing, listening intently as the sobbing intensified. I momentarily tried to convince myself it was just the wind, but deep down, I knew that wasn't the case. After a few moments, I worked up the courage to get up. Creeping down the hallway, my bare feet cold against the wooden floors, I approached the basement door. It loomed before me, a heavy wooden slab that seemed to breathe in the dark. I hesitated, heart pounding as I reached for the doorknob, my hand trembling with trepidation. Did I really want to know what lay behind there? As I turned the knob and pulled it open, a gust of stale air rushed at me, wrapping around me like a thick blanket. The darkness beyond seemed to pulse, alive and waiting. I flicked on the light switch, casting a weak beam that barely penetrated the gloomy depths, and there it was, everything I needed to confront my fears. The basement was cluttered with old furniture, broken appliances, and remnants of someone else's life. I scanned the room, half expecting to find someone lurking in the shadows. The whispers intensified, now floating around me, beckoning me closer. I felt a pull. Something unseen was drawing me deeper into the basement, and against my better judgment, I took a step forward. The air felt electric, tinged with a sense of melancholy that threatened to consume me. I just had to know who or what was down there. Suddenly, an old rocking chair creaked to life, swaying gently in the corner without any visible cause. My breath caught in my throat as I watched, entranced by the movement. It was as if someone was trying to communicate with me, to tell me their story. I approached the chair, my heart racing faster with every step. Why did it feel like I was being tested by something supernatural? As I reached out to touch it, the whispers escalated, transforming into a cacophony of voices drowning out my thoughts. I could discern fragments, words lost in the turmoil, but one word pierced through the chaos: help. The chair stopped moving, and the silence that followed was deafening, thick with expectation. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end as I backed away slowly, realizing I had stumbled onto something far beyond my understanding. The realization hit me like a wave. A spirit, or maybe more than one, was trapped in this basement, seeking help to escape their torment. I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind me with a resounding bang. Panic washed over me as I rushed to the knob, but it wouldn't budge. I was imprisoned in a room that felt alive with the sorrow of souls who had passed before me. I pounded against the door, pleading for it to open, but all I could hear was the crying intensifying, now accompanied by whispers urging me to listen. "Help us," they begged, their voices echoing off the walls and wrapping around me like a cocoon. I fell to my knees, feeling a mix of fear and empathy. How could I help them? What could possibly free them from this torment? Just when I thought I might lose my mind completely, the door creaked open on its own, the same way it had slammed shut. I stumbled through it, panting back into the hall, feeling an overwhelming urge to shut out the sadness that lingered in the basement, but I knew it had to be addressed, that I couldn't simply walk away from their cries. I resolved to find out more about the history of the house, hoping to uncover the truth behind the spirits that haunted it. Over the next few days, I researched the history of the house, visiting the local library and piecing together fragments of the past. I discovered that a family had lived there in the early 1900s, a mother and her children, who had mysteriously disappeared one summer. The details were scarce, but I could feel the weight of their unresolved story pressing against me, compelling me to go back to the basement one last time. When I returned to the basement, I could feel a heavy presence wrapping around me, almost welcoming me back. The rocking chair stood still, but the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Taking a deep breath, I spoke aloud, introducing myself and asking for the spirits to show themselves. I felt a shift in the air, and the whispers began to churn again, this time filled with urgency. I closed my eyes and concentrated on the whispers, trying to decipher their meaning. Suddenly, cold fingers brushed against my neck, icy as they grazed my skin. I gasped, feeling panic rise within me, but it was quickly replaced by an overwhelming sense of calm. I understood. They were not trying to harm me. They wanted to be heard. I opened my eyes and whispered back, assuring them I would uncover their story and help them find peace. As I spoke, the shadows in the basement shifted, focusing on me as if welcoming